Welcome to the Honest Hounds podcast, a place where we shine a spotlight on our wonderful members and their lives with their dogs. We'll be diving into the inspiring, the thought-provoking, and the sometimes emotional journeys that we go on with our four-legged friends. So sit back and relax and be inspired by the journeys that present in front of you. And if you need a community from anywhere in the world for you and your dog, we're absolutely here. So this is exceptionally exciting. Really episode that I've been looking forward to. So it's always great to get on the call and chat with the community. And this is a story that I think is going to be so relatable for so many people out there, and one that I think is really important to shifting the narrative. So we can't go anywhere until we know who we're talking to. My first question, as always, is who are you and who is your dog?
Hello, well, I'm Amy or Ames, and my dog is Ted, aka Teddington the Tenacious Teckle. And thank you so much for having me here. It's really, really exciting.
I think this is such a good one, and we'll dive into that name a little bit later, because that kind of underpins so much of what we're going to talk about today. But tell us a little bit first about Ted and those early days. Where did your journey begin?
So we got Ted in December 2020. So it was height of lockdown, height of COVID. And it was a really, I think, all-round quite challenging experience versus the one that we had pictured in our head when we originally were like, let's get a puppy. Especially, I think, in the time that we got him, actually, not only were we not allowed to kind of be around people, we were very isolated ourselves. And also, I think, at the time, there was loads of things like puppy napping and dog stealing and all these things that were in the news that suddenly became really, really prominent in our lives because there were things going on quite near where we lived at the time. And I think when we originally got Ted, this picture of like, oh, we're going to be like, skipping through the parks together I became personally, I think, quite an anxious owner because my protective mode went into play of wanting just to be there for Ted and protect him. And I think what ended up happening is I kind of looked at him more as like a child versus a dog. And with that, it didn't then kind of set him up for success at all. We weren't filling up his cup of what he needed. We were pandering to him and kind of being really like, oh, he needs to do this and we need to do this. And I think that's kind of where the education piece of, or the lack of education that we had really came into play. I had dogs growing up, German Shepherds growing up, and I kind of went into this thing of, I know what we need to do. And actually, it wasn't that at all. And telling your dog to sit, stay, touch, come, that's great, but really does it actually underpin what they need and what is required in the society of dog ownership. And I think over the years, what then happened is we made excuses for Ted. We tried really hard with different trainers, but it was essentially like a plaster over what actually needed to happen. And we ended up going from having a relatively happy, chilled out puppy to then getting a very dog reactive, human reactive to skateboards, bikes, dogs, loud noises. We'd go on walks and I'd come back in tears because it was just such an unpleasant walk. We'd also have people like laughing at us because they just think it's really funny that this little dog is like having a massive tantrum and I'm there trying to work out what the best next steps are. And you'd be like, this is just unbearable of kind of what we need to do. It escalated in 2023 when I was quite severely bitten by Ted on the face, and I ended up my lip was ripped completely in two, and I ended up having to get quite a number of stitches. And I think that was a real. He's not a cutesy, fluffy, cuddly teddy. He's a dog. He's an animal. He's got needs, and also we're not meeting those. All with good intentions, but we're not actually meeting those needs. So we went on quite a journey of going through different trainers at that point, and that's where I was really anxious or we used to be medicated kind of came into play, which was something that I wasn't quite happy with. And also I think it was a real understanding of, my mum actually said to me, she was like, you're treating him like a child and not like a dog. And actually it was that reflection of hang on a minute. I don't think we're treating him correctly. And it's hard to hear. You don't want it. You don't want to have to kind of go, it's me. It's us. But our real turning point was actually literally a year later to the week where Ted was showing me affection. And also at that point, affection was only ever on his terms. And if you did something that wasn't to his liking, he would growl, react. And so when he did give you affection, I was thinking, oh, aren't I lucky? My little dog's wanting to have cuddles. But actually, he was kind of was like, yeah, I'm going to get what I want, then I'm going to leave. And what happened was he was sat on my lap. James came to pick him up to move him off my lap because I was actually on a work call. And on the work call, Ted bit James's face. And I obviously quickly shut the call down. I took James straight to hospital. And it was in the queue whilst we were waiting to see a nurse in A&E that I was like, I'm signing up to Honest Hounds. I literally signed up in the queue whilst we were waiting for a nurse to be like, something needs to happen right now.
That might be a first. Amazing.
Yeah. Because we were kind of like, I don't know what to do. And also it's really interesting when it happens to like when the injury first happened to me the year prior, I was like, I'm fine, let's keep going, gotta keep going. When it happens to a loved one and all of a sudden you're like, actually, that's not okay. And it was for the first time that James turned around and was like, I don't know actually what I want to do with this dog. I don't actually know if I want to keep it. And we had family ringing us up going, maybe you should think about rehoming him or putting him into a dog's home. Not quite understanding that if you've got a bite history, it's not a very good outlook for a dog going into that situation. And for me, that was just an absolute not going to happen. And I think it was a thing of, right, well, that's not going to happen. So we need to work out what we can achieve. So I made sure James was okay. And the following day, I actually went away with Ted for a couple of days to give James a bit of space, a bit of headspace. And then we started work with Honest Hounds, got a call in, and we've just been on a journey ever since. And to think that we had 2 years of really bad bites and hospitalizations, and our 3rd year has been a real progress, the reactivity reset and stuff like that. And we've really come on leaps and bounds, which is so nice to see because it was a tough time.
And I think that there's so many messages within that and so many kind of threads that we could dive into. But I think there's a couple of things just to kind of pull out from your story that everyone that's listening is going to be going, oh my God, I absolutely relate to that. We're in this kind of transitional phase where we've had the impacts of COVID. We've had this huge boost in dogs, and everyone's now trying to kind of find their feet as their dogs are hitting all of those ages where we see those problems. I mean, pretty much every dog we get now from rescue is a 2-year-old male. And so it really does highlight the kind of the challenges that we're facing. But I think that your story, you guys, it's such a common one and it's such an underrated one because it's those kind of undercurrents and those tones of we absolutely were doing our best. You are not people who are sat by going, oh, well, shrug, we'll wait to see what happens. You're actively looking for the answers. You're actively putting in the time and energy. And I think it's really interesting because I think so many of us do fall into that trap of, oh my God, the puppy thing's going to be amazing. And hang on, I'm really anxious myself now. And there's all of these horror stories. And then we layer on the fact that really we're not sure how to speak the dog's language, and the dog goes, well, I can't handle this and I can't handle your anxiety, and it comes out in a really different way. But I think what's really interesting is when you guys obviously started working with Kim first and doing those Zooms, you were tagging us in stuff, and I'm kind of sat behind the scenes going, oh wow, it's so lovely to be able to see your journey.
Yeah.
But this is a really interesting Instagram handle, Ted the Anxious Explorer. And I kind of watching it going, And then we're kind of doing webinars and podcasts and things and kind of really focusing because it's really common. We get lots of people who come.
Yeah.
my dog is anxious, full stop, or
Yeah.
my dog is anxious, how do we help? And so I think it's never one that you can push. If I was to say to you at the time, your dog's not anxious, come on now, you'd have been like, oh, hang on a minute, this is what you've been telling me. And so I guess I'm really interested just to touch on the anxiety a little bit more, because I think it's one that a lot of people get stuck in the narrative of. So could you just give us a little bit more info on how you settled on anxiety as a term, and how that then maybe shaped what you were doing as a result of having that label?
Yeah, so it stemmed, I think, really early on. So when Ted came to us as an 8-week-old puppy, he had a broken tail, and the breeders would never actually tell us why and what happened. And actually, if I think back to that time where I was trying to work out what had happened, now I look back, having a lot of more education behind me, I was trying to understand it to then change his pathways with hands and reactivity and things like that, because I feel that came into play with him probably having quite a bit of pain in his tail as a tiny puppy. And that then escalated to then when we started speaking with trainers, I go, he doesn't really like being handled. And I'd explain he had a broken tail when he arrived to us. I don't know how recent that was. And it'd be, oh, he's really anxious with people touching him. And then I'd go, okay, but also when we see dogs, oh, well, he doesn't like anyone coming into the space. He must be really anxious about them coming into the space. Now, where I understand there's, if a dog's in pain, they can then have a reaction, for instance, to that. When we took him to the vets and they kind of assessed him, they were like, he doesn't seem to be in pain. So then it was like, okay, so then what could it be? And they landed very much on he's a really anxious dog. He doesn't like being around other dogs. He doesn't really want to participate. He doesn't like to be touched. And so therefore, my natural reaction was, well, I will protect him from all of these things.
Yourself included, though, right? Not the one you catching him either. So
yeah. So somehow I'm gonna make this work. And which I look back and go, oh my goodness, and it was all done with the best, most loving intentions.
absolutely commendable, but
but it was one of those things where actually that was completely the wrong action. And what we then ended up doing is, in inverted commas, protecting Ted from those things, protecting Ted from dogs coming up to him, protecting him from people wanting to touch him. And there's ways in which I don't mind him interacting with people to touch him now, but there's other ways in which I don't agree with, like people just forcing themselves. I don't like that still, and I think that's just kind of having common courtesy. But it's still not great when your dog goes from 0 to wanting to bite that person. So yeah, we really went into this like protective mode of thinking that we were doing the best thing, and then with that, if anyone was anxious, it was us, because you're there going, I need to try and protect everything. And that just isn't a world in which we live in. Actually what we need to do is we need to set Ted up for success, that he is going to go out and he's going to see a dog and he's going to understand how to work around a challenge. And actually he's going to be able to make his own decisions, because we weren't allowing him to do that. We were kind of making the decisions for him, and he has to make his own choices. And last week we had a guy come round to the flats. He was cleaning the flats, and he reached his hand out straight away to pet Ted. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see how this interaction goes with all the work that you put in. A year ago, that would have been a growl to then go to bite. He had his muzzle on. He walked up to the hand, looked at it, was like, I'm okay. Looked at me, and then came sat right next to my leg. I know. I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And the cleaner probably was looking at me going, what on earth is she on about? I was like, literally, could have had your hand gone if you hadn't got his muzzle on. And it's those things that like we protect him so much from those interactions, and for him to be making his own choices, that really then made that we were not setting him up to be able to be the dog that actually he needed to be, and the owners that we needed to be as well, and stop making those excuses and actually go, right, let's get to the real crux of the problem.
And I think this is the issue with the kind of anxiety label, is that we don't often allow for it to go beyond that. So there are absolutely dogs, like Ted absolutely needed his confidence building. He needed people to advocate for him. He needed to be able to have that support and that understanding and reading his body language and all the bits that comes with it. But I think sometimes what we seem to see from everyone that's kind of come in and worked with us and continued that journey is that your dog is anxious kind of equates to your dog is anxious, therefore keep them away from things. Your dog is anxious, therefore cannot. And actually, it's really interesting because how do you move them beyond that space and how do you create anticipation and the positive side of things without going, actually, we have to address this and work through what it is. But I think maybe even more the other side of that is that the version of Ted that turned up to our residential, we all kind of took a look at him and went, ah, exactly, you crushed them up. So I know it was really, really great. And obviously during the residential, we had 3 really intense days, but you guys went home that first night and then had a total rebrand on your Instagram. So I think it's such a kind of a sticking moment for us. And we're all sat there having a trainer debrief going, oh my God, have you seen the change in the name? And I think it means so much that people may not realize, because to us it was that sign of hope and you guys kind of moving out of a state you were stuck in. But I'd love to hear, I wasn't there with you in the evening. How did that play out? How did the change in the name lead to the kind of the rebrand and how you saw him?
I think when we went on the first day when we met you guys, and when you guys and the trainers looked at Ted and kind of was like, yeah, he's not anxious. And I remember Jess walked up next to me. She was like, Amy, why did you choose anxious explorer? Oh God,
Uh-oh.
I got it wrong. And but what it was getting it wrong and then understanding why it was so wrong. And that understanding was the best piece of information we've received with Ted for the last 4 years, because it gives us answers. Right, we can now do something. Actually, he needs a bit of confidence, but then actually he's a little bit cocky at sometimes and he just needs to dial it back a bit. He's not anxious and we just need to actually manage him, but then also allow him that freedom to make those choices. And it was such a revelation that we kind of went home and was like, oh my God, yeah, this is great. And remember, we spoke to our family that night and they were like, of course that's what he is.
You're like, "God,
Yeah. And it's that thing of going, right, well, we're making the shift now because you got to make the shift, otherwise you can't then carry on with the change. And so we're like, right, best foot forward. So we sat and thought about a couple of names that would be good for Ted, that go with his characteristics. So tenacious tackle was a good one. Removed anxious from everything, because he's not anxious. And kind of decided to take that step forward in kind of the right direction of actually what Ted's needs are and putting them in place quite early on.
And I guess that the proof is in the pudding, right? So there'll be people listening to this going, well, what did you see? And I think for us, just to kind of give some insight on what we were seeing with that little boy that got out of the car, is he kind of came out going, stick 'em up. And so coming out, he's loud, he's bored, he's kind of rushing at our dogs. He's making himself bigger and louder, and combine that with the marking and the posturing and still impact male energy, is we have a dog that can choose fight, flight, or freeze, and is very much going, "Oh no, I'm ready for this." And so it's not to say that he wasn't lacking confidence. We absolutely have to build that up. But I think anxiety gives this kind of tone of this, oh, this poor little baby who needs kind of scooping up and protecting. Whereas actually there was an element of us having to say to him, hey dude, there are some rules in how you interact with humans and dogs, and being kind of really overtly aggressive with that is not the way that we're going to get to hang out and do good stuff. And it was really lovely to see him settle in and go, oh, okay, cool, I can kind of kick about with all these other Daxes and all these other just play the rules. And really nice to see. But I think the dogs always learn quicker than the humans.
Yes.
And I think the reason that kind of overnight shift stands out so much is because it's quite atypical from what we normally get. And so what we normally get is people, understandably, who have thought their dog was one thing the whole time. and then they're handed this real different version of events from us, and it can be quite tricky. It can take quite a bit of time for them to then obviously learn the new version and all the signs that we're seeing. I'm just really interested in what you think it is in your guys' character or your experiences that made you just go, all right, game on. Like, that's absolutely into this. Because I think the reason that you've had so much progress since then, which really has only been 2 months.
Yeah, 2 months. Yeah.
An amazing amount. And I guess we can kind of touch on where he's at now. But for me, we're always working with the humans as much as the dogs, right? You guys are the ones that have to live with them. You have to take him home and carry that on. So I think the real the beauty is what is it that made you comfortable enough to go, we're actually accepting that this is maybe something that we misunderstood and we're ready to kind of pivot on that so quickly.
I think for me, a massive thing is trust, like trusting the process, being able to, because I remember when we first got Ted and I started following your Instagram page with Atlas, and it was one of the first only pages that I found that actually was kind of, I could really relate to. And so being able to see that change of what you guys had with Atlas and following Honest Hounds and being part of the community and seeing, okay, this works. This has real results, and it's understanding, and it's a partnership, and you're working with your dog. And I think we went into that weekend going, I fully trust the process. Like, they're the experts, and also we want so much good for Ted. We want him to live his best little life. I also think we'd had quite a lot of time of kind of going, actually, I don't think we're doing this right. I'm not too sure we're kind of hitting it right. And I know, like, we had quite a lot of calls with Kim, and I think it was really good, like, understanding like, the reset rules and things like that to then actually get what we needed out of Ted and set him up for success, but also start seeing those results. So I think coming in and going, do you know what? I'm going to fully trust the process. I'm going to take it on, and we're just going to go with it, because we've been at the lowest of the low when we're thinking we're going to have to get rid of him and things. Not that I wanted to, but yes. But like we've been there and we've kind of gone, this is really, really bad. And we've had days where, you know, just been in tears because kind of being like, how has this happened? And it's those days that you remember and kind of go, okay, you know, that can't happen again. I mean, there's always chances that you're going to have setbacks, but you then at least then know how to then work on those setbacks with the things that we learn over that course. And yeah, I just think we were just like, let's just take it and run with it, because, you know, all we want is the best for him, and we trust the people around us to do that.
And it is so brilliant to see, and it's been absolutely, obviously when we do the residentials, it's not the end point, but it's been amazing to see all the changes and things that have happened in the last 2 months. But I'd love to hear in your words, for those people that haven't been following on your Instagram, what shifts have you seen and what progress have you made?
I think the partnership element is so key. Kind of going, you're not the boss, you're not in charge, you're a team, and working through that. And one thing that we learn on the residential is that kind of like inviting Ted in to say hello to us and for cuddles, or in interaction. And that's been really, really beneficial, because actually it's not now on just his terms, it's on our terms. If he doesn't want to, that's fine. But last night I opened my arms and he came up to me, put his head on my lap, and literally for a minute let me like stroke his head. And it sounds really silly, because I can easily get quite emotional.
Oh, you're making me
like someone else has bitten me. Oh God. But it's because he never ever would have done that without it being like a real, like, oh, fine, and then, like, you know, I don't like this and I'm going, and, you know, bit of attitude. But he was really just wanting that affection, and it was so lovely that it was on kind of our terms, and it was a real nice partnership. And I think it's been really interesting kind of working like that, because that has really changed our dynamic and how we work as a little team. Even with like putting on his muzzle, we go through loads of different stages of putting on his muzzle and things like that. And it's amazing on the odd occasion where I haven't been able to follow the process because some things happen, I need to whack it on him quite quickly. He literally looks at me like, I can't believe you just did that. We haven't done the process. This is not what we agreed. It does make me laugh. He's like, I need at least 5 more treats before this is happening. But it's been a real journey, and the ability to like have him off lead and go on runs and let him have that freedom of being Ted the dog is incredible. So yeah, it's been really, really good, and we still to this day have elements of reset rules. So he's still in his crate 3 times a day because he absolutely loves his sleep, and he loves being able to go into that space. But we're having a lot less growling, because beforehand you'd walk past his crate and he'd get so angry if you went anywhere near it. And we're working through that. We still have the odd moment where things happen. We had someone with fireworks the other night, bizarrely. And he was getting quite annoyed that it was fireworks, and when we walked by his crate he did give a little bit of a growl. But with that, I was like, do you know what? We're not snarling, we're not biting at the crate, we're not trying to, go on full attack mode. He's kind of going, I want to sleep and this is a bit rubbish. And so, yeah, we've really moved on, I think, to be a lot more kind of harmonious together. And also kind of not making excuses for him, being like, okay, he's done that and that's because of that and that wasn't very good. So next time we're going to pattern interrupt, or next time we're going to step in here, and things like that has been really, really key. But yeah, partnership is a massive thing for us.
I think that's the thing, right? We often talk about this a lot on the residentials, and I think when you're kind of alluding to the fact that it is really emotional, I mean, I totally get it. I was there like, I understand.
It is.
I think it's so interesting because there'll be some people listening to this that are going, what do you mean you can't touch your dog? That's absurd. But there's also going to be a lot of people who are going, me too. And I think that there's this real underbelly in the social media world of people not really sharing so openly that you can have a dog that you can kind of live with but maybe can't interact with or don't feel safe
Yeah.
with. I think it really sticks in my mind when you guys were up doing the touch stuff and you went to touch him and you were really hesitant about that process, and then out, and then you're even more kind of going, oh my goodness, this is a thing, which actually, if we think about it, when we've been bitten by our dog, is a totally normal human reaction as a defense mechanism. But it's so hard. Again, it comes back to that getting stuck there. And so every time you put a little video up and you guys are having a little cuddle or having a little interaction, it's the loveliest thing to see. And I think people don't often realize how far they've lost the trust and the partnership.
Yeah.
Actually building it back the other way.
And I think on the touch thing, like he has massages maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And that is also kind of a massive step for both of us. So as you say, like he growled and I completely flinched and was like, oh, I don't want to upset him or touch him. And now we have a massage where he has his treats and we work down his body, and then he'll go give me like oh, I'm not happy, and I'll go okay, and I let my hands go, and then he's like, okay, that's fine, we can carry on now, and then we carry on, we work on it, and it's that kind of, he's aware that I'm going to stop and we're working together as a team. And now it means that I can give him a massage and massage his legs and things like that, because he's an active little chap but with very small legs, so we need to give lots of massages to them. And it's really nice that I can now feel that I can also kind of give back to him and help him as well in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good point to touch on with his little legs. Do you ever I feel like we're in this place now where there's a real difference between big dogs and small dogs, and there's this kind of aspect of, some people are like, oh well, small dogs need training too, and others are kind of on the thing of, well, they're only small. I think it's such a good one to talk to those people who are listening who have had the smaller dogs, because I think sometimes we maybe slip into, oh, well, they're only small, how hard can it be? And actually it's impacted your life hugely, and as you say, lies. So just because he's small in size doesn't mean that the journey isn't as complex. Do you feel like there's ever a narrative of, oh well, he's only a Daxi, come on now?
I think it's like he's small but mighty, and I also think small dogs are really underestimated. I've had it where I met this lovely couple in a pub and they had a white-haired dachshund, really cute. And I was like, oh, you should come for a walk. Oh no, she doesn't like long walks. She only has like 10-minute walks, and and I was like, oh, how old is she? 2. Okay. And I was like, I'm sure she'll actually like going for longer walks in 10 minutes, kind of thing. And it's that thing of going, just because they're small doesn't mean they have any less needs or requirements than a big dog. Ted's walk 3 times a day for about 2.5 hours, and we kind of go out and we really kind of work on so many different things and enrichment things. And I think in terms of I do think there is that narrative of small, don't really need that much training, don't really need that much exercise. It's easier to get a small dog. And actually, my German Shepherds were so much easier than than Ted. If I could go back and go, actually, Dave's going to get a German Shepherd, not an dachshund. But yeah, he's hard work and but really rewarding. But it's no mean feat getting a small dog. You still have the same things that you have to work through.
Well, it's so interesting, isn't it, when you actually think these guys are little badger hunters. Are they actually bred to go and cull badgers and and all that? But it's the poor Daxies, and you do see quite a lot of them that are really loud and kind of excessively bark, or they can't settle, or they've got separation anxiety. They're not very good being on their own, and you just think, if you could maybe treat it like the little badger hunter that it wanted to be.
Absolutely. This little Daxie that they had, all she wanted to do was come and explore. And every time she made a step, the owner would claw her back and put her back in her lap again. I was thinking, just put her on the floor. Let her just have a little sniff around. It's fine. What's going to happen? It's okay. But it is that thing of like a lap dog and thinking that they just want to, just curl up in the ball and not do much. But actually, they're little working dogs. They want to get out and they want to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this concept of you and Ted kind of out exploring your walks together. And obviously beyond just kind of being part of the community, you are also one of our neutral walk leaders, which is such an amazing thing to see. And I know recently you guys have kind of gone beyond that and you're starting to adventure outside of London. But I'd love to hear more about the kind of role. Has it helped you guys, and what do you enjoy about that kind of partnership?
Do you know what? It's been amazing. I absolutely love being a walk leader on so many different levels. There's a couple of months ago, I think we were maybe November time. It was before the retreat. Ted had we'd have a bit of a setback trying to put his muzzle on, and he came for my arm and bit my jumper. And thankfully I was fine, but we were literally setting off to go on a walk for us to run on. And I remember having a moment. James is away on a work trip, and I was in tears, being like, right, I'm gonna cancel it and tell everyone I'm really sorry. And then I paused for a second. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna go and hang out with everybody that understands exactly what I'm going through, because all of us have been in a similar situation, and actually, isn't that a great thing to do? So Ted had a nice little time in the garden, popped in his crate, and off I went. And I led a really great walk. Great because I had incredible people with me, being able to be kind of there to help me whilst I was having a bit of a moment and being like, oh God. But also showing encouragement of you've got this, we know what we need to do together, and kind of checking in with me, which was wonderful. And we also offer that support to anyone in our group, which is brilliant. And it's that kind of thing of all going out together and being like, right, we've got, we know what we're doing. We know if any off-lead dogs come, we know that we can step in, we've got this sorted. And giving people and each other the confidence is such a rewarding experience.
Do you think that specifically that day, do you think that allowed you to kind of bounce back from the setback a bit quicker? I'm thinking back to when I had stuff like that. If I hadn't had that group or that community, I've absolutely would have sat at home and doom spiraled and been like, this is it, back to
100%.
Should we do this? But actually maybe getting out and kind of shaking it off is a quicker one for you to recover.
It wasn't. Also, it was kind of going, I think if I hadn't have done that and I just sat at home, got quite upset, kind of taken Ted for a walk that actually none of us were really enjoying, versus actually I was like, do you know what? I'm actually going to put myself first, and Ted, you're fine. You're going to stay here, and I'm going to go, and I'll come back later. And when I came back, he'd had a time to kind of go in his crate, decompress. I'd had a time to be able to decompress, and absolutely. I came back being like, okay, let's try again. Let's do this. And it was so helpful, because you just got you got a team of people that you're all kind of going through similar things and you're working through it together. So it was so good.
That's really cool. So I guess you've had a couple of moments in the past, probably the moment with James trying to pick him off of your lap, and then the frenzy that is having to go off to hospital and dealing with all of these layers and all of these complex emotions. And I think there's a lot of people who have been in maybe not that extreme a situation, but certainly one which has kind of thrown them into a complete tailspin. You're now on a very different trajectory and in a very different position. If you're looking back to the moments and those feelings of overwhelm and uncertainty, is there anything that you would offer to people that are still stuck in that space now versus where you are sat feeling yourself at the minute?
Yeah, I think a key thing is, I remember this was mentioned on the retreat, is that like you keep always remembering kind of the bad instances that have happened, but not those small little bits of progress. It's so easy to disregard those when you have a setback. So I think the key thing is remembering there's those small little changes. It doesn't matter how small they are, they're big for dealing with a dog that's reactive. I also think that we had so many comments when Ted started wearing his muzzle from people. It's quite surprising how many people think it's okay to say stuff. But kind of building up a bit of like the muzzle's on. We're doing this because it's safe for me. It's safe for the dog, and setting that up so you can do different scenarios with the dog and feel in a safe space to do that. I think when we first started with the muzzle, you kind of feel like, oh God, he's a muzzle. Like, I never imagined that Ted would wear a muzzle, and all these types of things, and you make it emotional, but actually it's a tool. And I think Alex said it. It's like putting on a seatbelt. You wouldn't not put your seatbelt on in a car, and so putting that safety network and therefore kind of for training, I think is really key. And then just looking after yourself. I think it's so easy to be able to really analyze everything. Like, I go, what happened? Okay, what did that dog do? What was he like? And you try and break down
2 degrees warmer today than it was yesterday. That must
yeah, it must be, or maybe, and you'd end up trying to go through like a Rolodex of what's happened and how could I have done something different, and actually just going, draw a line. We're going to come up with a plan of how we can address if that situation happens again, and what we're going to do, and yeah, being kind to yourself, I think, is so important, because it's really easy to go down into a bit of a spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'd love to know, in terms of things that you've reflected on, one thing that you used to believe that you no longer do when it comes to this crazy old journey of life with Ted.
Oh, one thing I used to believe. I think one thing I used to believe is that, I guess it's the thing of, it doesn't sound great, but that thing of like, I'm the boss and you do what I say. And actually joining Honest Hounds and doing the partnership project and doing all the reading and webinars and understanding stuff and the retreat, you kind of go, yeah, that's not okay. you know, and there was I think it was Willow was kind of doing commands where you do sit, stay, versus actually just having a conversation, right? And I go, come on, Ted, can you please sit? And what I get out of that versus telling Ted sit is so much more. So I think kind of that narrative, actually, it's a partnership. It's not about I am the owner and you are the dog. It's working together.
And do you find that's a kind of happier headspace for you to be in as well?
Absolutely. Because you feel like a little like dynamic duo. Like, off we go. Let's go do this, Ted. We've got this. And I think that's such a nice place to be in, because I feel like I've got his back and he's got mine, but in a positive way, not in a I will protect you way, in a more of a partnership way.
And I think that's maybe what we all thought we were getting when we got a dog anyway, right? And they ate so far away from it as the complexities go on. So yeah, that's a good point. So I'd love to know then, what is next on your journey with Ted?
So Ted and I are going to continue with our training and kind of working on our partnership. We're also planning, hopefully next year, introducing another dog into the house, which I think will be very exciting. So that's one thing that we're also looking to do. And then in my future plan, I'm also hoping to shift out of the corporate world of working in London to kind of investing more time in learning and hopefully becoming a trainer myself. So that's something that I'd really like to do, and something that without Ted, I would never be here. And it's, I think, one of those things that I look at mine and Ted's journey, and actually I wouldn't change it because it's made me learn so much and has educated both myself and James to another level that we can now be in a place that when we do get another dog, we're set up in such a better space than we were beforehand.
Oh, that's super exciting. Oh, that'd be so cool. We can get you back on and you can listen back to this episode and be like, oh, well, now I help her. I know you.
Well, all the stuff I know now.
Me and my team of dogs are of helping the world. Oh, that's super exciting. And I think it is brilliant. It's a brilliant place to be because you've got that empathy, you've got that understanding, and no one knows it better than someone that's really lived it. So the support
Absolutely.
of the dogs and the humans is such a good position to be in.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice, like, wholesome goal to have, to be able to help people help dogs like I have been helped, because as I say, we wouldn't be here without you guys. So yeah, big thank you for that.
Very, really exciting, and I'm happy, really looking forward to being part of that process as much as we can as well. And
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you.
very cool. Okay, I'd like to finish by firing some quick fire questions your way. So whatever comes to the forefront of your mind, no wrong answers, but
Okay.
get you thinking, and then we will wrap up. So my first thing is your favorite thing about Ted.
His sassiness. I say that in the fact that sometimes he's, like, obviously we're on this journey, but sometimes I'm like, you are such a sassy chap. And I think it gives him character, right? I think it works.
Absolutely. His favorite thing to do.
There's a few. He absolutely loves tug, like, loves it. Like, not that you could have said that he, because I know we had the exercise where he was running after the toy on the retreat, which I thought he'd be obsessed with, because I basically spend my days with a towel running around the house and the garden with him chasing it. So I was like, he's gonna love this. But he does in the house, just not when it sets up outside. But yeah, he really enjoys doing that. Yeah, and then also he loves playing. We hide things around on our walks and get him to find it, and he absolutely loves, like, finding things on his walks, which is good.
That's really nice. Okay, your favorite training item.
Ooh, favorite training item. I I actually think, I don't know whether it's used, but the crate. I think that like the crate has become such a big thing for what we use with Ted to allow him to have his sleep and his space, and has been a really good tool for us when we've been doing like reset rules. So that's been a really big thing for us.
Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, so some superheroes are invisible, some can fly. What is your dog owner superpower?
I'd like to think the ability to adapt, to be like, okay, this has happened, right, on to the next, and be able to kind of take things on, digest it, and be like, okay, and now that I'm going to go do that. So I'd like to think it'd be kind of adapting.
That's cool. One thing you wish you'd known from day one of bringing Ted home.
Partnership. And also, like, the appropriate way to socialize a puppy. I realized that at that point we were in lockdown, it's a very different situation, but how I'd go around being able to introduce him to things would be so different to kind of what we did then.
And my last question for you before we wrap up. One thing that you would say people who are still struggling on their journey.
Keep going. It's really tough. You have really bad days at times, but the Honest Hound community has people who have been in that situation, who currently are in that situation, who are working through it, who are at the other side. And, we all are there to support. And I think use the tools, book yourself in with a trainer, and just keep going, because sometimes, yeah, you have your bad days, but also the highs are so high when you start seeing those changes. And yeah, like, I get emotional now, not because Ted's been, challenging, but emotional because Ted's making such big moves, and it's brilliant. And I actually, to add to his superpower, his adaptability as well, because he has also just kind of roll with it and he's like, yeah, sure, okay, I might not like it, but actually this is great because I'm going to get what I want out of it in the end. So I think that's another one of his superpowers.
Well, lovely. They say that their owners and humans and dogs are like each other. It's got the same superpower there. Amy, it's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Before we wrap up, if someone wants to follow along with the journey of Ted the not anxious techie, where can they follow along?
So they can follow on Instagram, and it's Ted the Tenacious Tackle, and they can follow for our journey.
And I'll put a link in there. But thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's amazing.